the hum of the oscilloscope was a familiar lullaby in my world. For years, I'd navigated the intricate labyrinth of wires, amplifiers, speakers, and displays, transforming empty rooms into immersive sonic and visual landscapes. My name is Alex, and I'm an audiovisual installer. It's a job many might dismiss as glorified cable monkeying, but to me, it was an art form, a delicate dance between cutting-edge technology and the unique acoustics of a client's living space. Every project was a new canvas, every home a new challenge, and the satisfaction of seeing a perfectly calibrated system spring to life, filling a room with pristine sound and crystal-clear visuals, was a reward in itself. Our company, Sonic Solutions, wasn't some faceless corporate giant. We were a tight-knit team, built on reputation and word of mouth, specializing in high-end, custom home theater and whole-house audio systems. We prided ourselves on meticulous craftsmanship, attention to detail, and an almost obsessive pursuit of audio fidelity and visual perfection. Our clients weren't just buying electronics, they were investing in an experience, and we were the architects of that experience. This often meant dealing with discerning, sometimes eccentric, individuals who had very specific, often grand, visions for their entertainment spaces. It wasn't always easy, but the complexity was what kept it interesting. My boss, Mark, was the heart and soul of Sonic Solutions. A grizzled veteran of the AV industry, he had an uncanny ability to size up a client, a project, and even the most convoluted technical problem with a single, knowing glance. Mark wasn't just a boss. He was a mentor, a strategist, and occasionally a co-conspirator. He had a knack for navigating the treacherous waters of client expectations, especially when those expectations bordered on the unreasonable or the outright bizarre. He believed in doing things right, even if it meant taking longer or charging more, but he also understood the subtle art of client management, knowing when to push back, when to compromise, and when, as I would soon discover, to get a little creative. He had seen it all, from clients demanding speakers be invisible to the naked eye, to others who thought a single Wi-Fi router could power an entire smart home. His calm demeanor, even in the face of chaos, was legendary among our small crew. He trusted his team implicitly, giving us the autonomy to solve problems on the fly, knowing we'd uphold the company's standards. This trust was a two-way street. We knew he'd always have our backs, especially when a project went sideways, which, in the world of custom installations, was less a possibility and more an inevitability. A typical day for me involved a delicate balance of technical prowess and psychological insight. I'd spend mornings meticulously planning wire runs, calculating speaker placement for optimal sound dispersion, and configuring complex network infrastructures. Afternoons were often on-site, a symphony of drilling, wiring, soldering, and programming. It wasn't just about connecting components, it was about integrating them seamlessly into a home's aesthetic, ensuring they were both powerful and discreet. We often worked in environments ranging from sprawling suburban mansions to sleek urban penthouses, each presenting its own unique architectural and design challenges. Concrete walls, for instance, were a common nemesis, turning what should be a simple wire run into an arduous, dust-filled battle against reinforced steel and solid masonry. But even these challenges held a certain appeal. Overcoming them felt like a small victory, a testament to our ingenuity and perseverance. I loved the tangible results of my work, the moment a client's eyes lit up as their favorite movie burst to life with cinematic grandeur, or when a perfectly balanced playlist filled their home with rich, ambient sound. It was more than just a job, it was a craft, and I took immense pride in every single installation, no matter how big or small. This dedication, this almost spiritual connection to the perfection of sound and vision, would soon be tested in ways I could never have anticipated, by a client who seemed determined to challenge every fiber of my professional patience and personal integrity. My world, usually a harmonious blend of technology and client satisfaction, was about to be plunged into dissonance. The call came in on a Tuesday morning, a day that started like any other, filled with the usual hum of background noise in our office, the low murmur of Mark on the phone, the clack of keyboards, the distant whir of a server. But this call, as Mark's expression slowly shifted from his usual calm to a subtle tightening around his eyes, seemed different. He listened intently, occasionally interjecting with a terse, "I see," or "understood," his pen scribbling notes on a pad with increasing intensity. When he finally hung up, he leaned back in his chair, a long, contemplative sigh escaping his lips. "Well, Alex," he began, pushing his glasses up his nose, "it seems we have a new contender for Client of the Year, though I suspect it won't be for positive reasons." He paused, a wry smile playing on his lips. "We just got off the phone with a Mr. Reginald Thorne. He prefers to be called Mr. Entitled." I chuckled, but Mark's tone suggested this was no laughing matter. "What's the story, boss?" "Mr. Entitled," Mark explained, consulting his notes, "is hosting a rather significant party this coming Saturday. And he's just decided, with 4 days to spare, that he absolutely must have a state-of-the-art, whole-house audio and video system installed. And I mean whole house, every room, every outdoor space, integrated controls, the works." My eyebrows shot up. 4 days? For a whole house system? That's ambitious, to say the least. Especially if it's a high-end setup. A typical whole house installation, even a moderately complex one, could easily take weeks, factoring in design, pre-wiring, component delivery, and meticulous calibration. 4 days was unheard of, a logistical nightmare wrapped in a technical impossibility. "Precisely," Mark affirmed, nodding. "And here's the kicker. His house, according to his rather verbose description, is a modern architectural marvel. Which, in our line of work, usually translates to concrete walls everywhere, no crawl spaces, and a general disdain for anything that isn't aesthetically minimalist, regardless of practicality." He gestured vaguely, as if envisioning the structural challenges. He was quite insistent on the minimalist part, meaning all wiring must be completely concealed, no visible conduit, no exposed plates. He also made it clear he expects perfection and no excuses given the premium he's willing to pay. I winced. Concrete walls were our bane. Running wires through them meant specialized tools, dust, noise, and often significant structural modifications that required careful planning and execution. It was slow, laborious work, and doing it quickly was almost impossible without cutting corners, which we never did. The combination of a massive scope, an impossible deadline, and challenging architecture was a recipe for disaster. "So, what did you tell him?" I asked, bracing myself. "I told him it was an extremely aggressive timeline, bordering on impossible, especially with the level of quality we deliver," Mark replied. I also explained the complexities of working with concrete and the additional labor involved. Naturally, this meant we had to quote him a significantly higher price than usual. The rush job, pain-in-the-ass premium, if you will. He paused, a glint in his eye. We quoted him double our standard rate for a system of that size and complexity, plus an additional surcharge for the expedited timeline and the concrete work. To my surprise, after much blustering and complaining about extortionate prices and unprofessional gouging, he reluctantly agreed. He even paid half of it up front, which is unusual for a new client of his apparent temperament. I suspect he's desperate. "Half up front, huh? That's something at least," I mused, though a sense of unease settled in my stomach. Clients who paid under duress, especially after so much complaint, often turned out to be the most problematic. They felt cheated from the outset, and that resentment usually manifested in myriad ways throughout the project. "Indeed," Mark said, his expression turning serious. "But don't let that lull you into a false sense of security. He made it very clear that if anything, and I mean anything, wasn't absolutely perfect by Saturday, he wouldn't pay the remaining balance. He even hinted, rather unsubtle, that he has a reputation for getting things done his way, and that he's not afraid to make a fuss if he feels he's been wronged. He sounds like the type who enjoys the process of complaining more than the actual resolution." My initial amusement faded, replaced by a growing sense of dread. This wasn't just a tough job, it was a minefield. A demanding client, an impossible deadline, a challenging environment, and a clear threat of non-payment. It was the perfect storm. "So, we're doing it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Mark nodded, pushing himself up from his desk. "We are." It's a massive job, Alex, and a massive payout if we pull it off. But it's going to be hell. I'm assigning you as lead installer. You're the best we have for these high-pressure, complex builds. Get the crew ready. We start first thing tomorrow. And be prepared for anything. This Mr. Entitled sounds like he could give a saint an ulcer. He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture of both camaraderie and commiseration. Just remember, Alex, the customer is always right until they're not. And when they're not, we find creative solutions. His words, delivered with a knowing wink, would echo in my mind far sooner than I could have imagined. The stage was set for what would undoubtedly be the most challenging and ultimately the most satisfying installation of my career. My gut told me this wasn't just about wires and speakers, it was about navigating a psychological battlefield. The next 3 days blurred into a grueling marathon of dust, sweat, and simmering frustration. Mr. Entitled's house was, as Mark had predicted, a fortress of concrete and minimalist design. Every wall seemed to resist our drills, every corner seemed to hide an unforeseen obstacle. We brought in extra hands, working from dawn until well past dusk, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the sheer will to meet an impossible deadline. The air was thick with concrete dust, the rhythmic thud of hammer drills echoing through the cavernous, unfinished spaces. From the moment we arrived on Wednesday morning, Mr. Entitled proved to be every bit the nightmare client Mark had warned us about. He hovered, a constant, unwelcome shadow, scrutinizing every move, questioning every decision, and offering unsolicited suggestions that invariably complicated our work. His presence was a palpable drain on morale, a constant undercurrent of irritation that threatened to boil over. He wasn't just demanding, he was actively hostile, his voice dripping with condescension, his eyes darting around as if searching for flaws before they even materialized. "Are you sure that wire run is optimal, young man?" he'd sneer, peering over my shoulder as I meticulously snaked a fiber optic cable through a newly drilled channel. "It looks rather exposed. I thought you people were professionals. I'm paying a premium for perfection, not some amateurish hack job." I'd grit my teeth, forcing a polite, professional smile. "Mr. Thorne, this is the most efficient and discreet path given the structural limitations. Once the wall is patched and painted, it will be completely invisible." My words, carefully measured and devoid of any hint of my true feelings, seemed to fall on deaf ears. He would just scoff, shake his head, and wander off to find another perceived imperfection. His insults weren't limited to my work. They extended to my crew, to our tools, even to our choice of lunch. Is that what you call a lunch break? Huddled over greasy sandwiches? I expect my contractors to maintain a certain level of decorum on my property. This isn't a construction site, it's my home. He'd say this while we were literally covered in concrete dust, surrounded by tools and half-finished walls. His hypocrisy was astounding. One particularly memorable incident involved a speaker placement. We had meticulously calculated the optimal position for a surround sound speaker in his living room, factoring in room dimensions, seating arrangements, and acoustic properties. We had even marked the spot with painter's tape, ready for installation. Mr. Entitled, however, decided he didn't like the aesthetics of the proposed location. "No, no, no," he declared, waving a dismissive hand. "That simply won't do. It clashes with the line of the window frame. I want it here." He pointed to a spot a full 2 feet away, directly behind a heavy velvet curtain, a location that would completely muffle the sound and render the speaker useless for its intended purpose. I tried to explain, patiently, the principles of acoustic engineering, the importance of unobstructed sound paths, the very reason we had chosen the original spot. "Mr. Thorne, placing the speaker there will severely compromise the sound quality. It will be muffled and detract from the immersive experience you're paying for." He cut me off, his voice rising in irritation. "I don't care about your acoustic engineering, young man. I care about what looks right. I am the client, and I am paying you a substantial sum of money to do as I instruct. Now move it there, or consider this conversation over." It was a direct order, a blatant disregard for our expertise. Mark had always taught us to stand our ground on technical matters that compromise performance, But Mr. Entitled's tone left no room for negotiation. We were forced to comply, knowing full well that the system's performance would be compromised and that he would inevitably blame us for it later. It was a constant battle between our professional standards and his arbitrary demands, and in almost every instance, his demands won out simply because he held the purse strings. The concrete walls were indeed a nightmare. We spent an entire day just chasing wires through solid masonry, using specialized diamond-tipped drills and chisels, the noise reverberating through the house. Each wire run felt like an archaeological excavation, slow and painstaking. Dust coated everything, despite our best efforts to contain it. Mr. Entitled would frequently appear, wiping a finger across a surface and then holding it up accusingly, as if we were deliberately trying to soil his pristine home. This is unacceptable. My cleaning staff will have a fit. Are you even attempting to keep this place tidy? By Friday evening, we were utterly exhausted, physically and mentally drained. But against all odds, we had done it. The core system, the main living room theater, the whole house audio zones, the primary control interface, was installed, wired, and powered up. We performed our final diagnostics, running test tones, checking every connection, calibrating the audio levels in each zone. Every speaker hummed with perfect clarity, every screen displayed a pristine image. The system was, by all objective measures, working flawlessly. We had pushed ourselves to the absolute limit, sacrificing sleep and sanity, to deliver on his impossible deadline. As I packed up my tools, a profound sense of relief washed over me, mixed with a lingering bitterness. We had delivered, but at what cost to our patience and dignity? I just wanted to get out of that house and never look back. I signed off on the internal completion checklist, confirmed with my crew that everything was operational, and sent a brief text to Mark. System operational. Leaving site. Never want to see concrete again. Little did I know, my ordeal with Mr. Entitled was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Saturday morning dawned, crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in my mind. I was still half asleep, nursing a much-needed cup of coffee, when my phone, the work-issued one I usually kept on silent during weekends, vibrated violently on the kitchen counter. The caller ID flashed Mark. My stomach instantly tightened. It was too early for a casual check-in, and after the week we'd had, I knew this couldn't be good news. "Morning, Mark," I answered, trying to sound more awake than I felt. His voice, usually calm and measured, was tinged with an unusual edge of controlled fury. "Alex, you're not going to believe this. Mr. Entitled just called. He's absolutely livid." A cold dread settled over me. Livid about what? The system was working perfectly when we left last night. We tested every zone, every speaker, every input. I could still hear the crisp, clear tones of the test tracks echoing in my memory. There was no way it wasn't working. "He claims it's completely dead," Mark stated, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Says nothing is working. Not a single speaker, not a single screen. He says his party is ruined, and he's blaming us entirely. He's demanding we come back immediately and fix it, free of charge, of course." My grip on the phone tightened. Dead? That's impossible. We spent hours calibrating and testing. Every single component was online. He must have done something. Or he's just trying to pull a fast one. The thought of him deliberately sabotaging the system, or simply lying to avoid payment, immediately sprang to mind. It wouldn't be out of character for the man. "Oh, he's definitely trying to pull a fast one," Mark confirmed, his voice laced with venom. "But it gets better." He then proceeded to inform me, in no uncertain terms, that he flat out refuses to pay the remaining balance. He said, and I quote, "I don't pay for broken equipment. In fact, I often get things for free by simply complaining enough. It's a talent of mine." He actually boasted about it, Alex. He thinks he's got us over a barrel. A wave of white-hot anger washed over me, eclipsing my exhaustion. This wasn't just about money, it was about blatant disrespect, a calculated attempt to exploit our hard work and integrity. After everything we had put into that job, the impossible hours, the constant insults, the physical toll, he was trying to stiff us, gloating about it like a schoolyard bully. The sheer audacity of the man was breathtaking. My mind raced, replaying every condescending remark, every sneer, every ridiculous demand. This wasn't just a difficult client, he was a con artist, a professional complainer, and he had just declared war. He actually said that? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper, trying to process the brazenness of his admission. Word for word, Mark confirmed, a steely resolve now evident in his tone. He thinks he's played us. He thinks he's found a loophole. He thinks he can walk all over us and get a top-tier system for half price, then boast about it to his party guests. There was a pause, a moment of shared indignation hanging in the air. Then, Mark's voice took on a new, almost conspiratorial quality. But here's the thing, Alex. Mr. Entitled just made a very big mistake. He underestimated us. He underestimated me. And he certainly underestimated you. My ears perked up. This was the Mark I knew, the strategist, the problem solver who wasn't afraid to bend the rules when justice demanded it. What are you thinking, boss? I asked, a spark of anticipation igniting within me. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with a thrilling sense of possibility. He gave us the green light for a little creative problem solving, Mark said, the words delivered with a low chuckle that sent a shiver of understanding down my spine. He wants us to come back and fix his broken system, right? Well, we'll fix it. On our terms. And he'll pay for it. Every last penny and then some. What's the plan? I asked, a grin slowly spreading across my face. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. This was no longer just a job. It was personal. It was about principle, about pride, about teaching a bully a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. I need you to go back to his house, Mark instructed, his voice now calm and precise, like a general outlining a battle plan. Pretend to diagnose the issue. Spend some time there, make it look good. Get him to sign off that the system is working perfectly before you leave. Make sure he's absolutely convinced it's fixed, even if it means just getting one speaker to hum. Then, once you have that signed confirmation, and only then, I want you to do something very specific. Something that will ensure he really understands what broken means. Something that will make him desperate to pay us. Can you handle that, Alex? My grin widened. Consider it handled, boss. What exactly do you want me to do? Mark outlined his plan, and as he spoke, a delicious sense of anticipation filled me. It was audacious, perfectly tailored to Mr. Entitled's arrogance, and utterly brilliant in its simplicity. This wasn't just about getting paid, it was about poetic justice. It was about turning the tables on a man who thought he could walk all over anyone. And one more thing, Mark added, just before hanging up. Once you're done, turn off your work phone. Don't answer it for anyone, especially not Mr. Entitled. Let him stew. Let him realize just how much he needs us. I hung up, the phone feeling lighter in my hand. The anger hadn't dissipated, but now it was channeled, focused, transformed into a cold, calculated resolve. Mr. Entitled wanted to play games? Fine. We'd play. And I had a feeling he was about to learn a very painful, very expensive lesson about underestimating the people he thought he could exploit. The stage was set, not for a repair, but for a meticulously orchestrated act of revenge. Armed with Mark's instructions and a newfound, chilling resolve, I drove back to Mr. Entitled's house. The Saturday morning traffic was light, but my mind was a whirlwind of anticipation and a simmering, righteous anger. The house loomed, an imposing structure of glass and concrete, radiating the same cold, uninviting aura as its owner. I parked my work van, grabbing a small toolkit, and took a deep breath. This wasn't just a service call, it was a mission. As I approached the front door, I could already hear the faint, muffled sounds of what was clearly a party in full swing: laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. The irony was not lost on me. Here he was, hosting his grand event, while simultaneously trying to cheat us out of our hard-earned money. The thought only solidified my determination. He answered the door himself, his face a mask of barely contained fury, his eyes narrowed into suspicious slits. He was dressed in a crisp, expensive-looking linen suit, clearly trying to project an image of effortless sophistication, but the vein throbbing in his temple betrayed his true state. "You're finally here," he snapped, his voice tight with impatience, as if I had kept him waiting for hours. "It's about time. My guests are arriving, and my entire system is dead. This is an absolute disaster. I told your boss this was unacceptable." I forced a calm, professional demeanor, my expression carefully neutral. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne. I understand there's an issue with your system. I'm here to diagnose and resolve it." I kept my voice even, giving no hint of the storm brewing within me. He scoffed. "Diagnose? There's nothing to diagnose. It's broken. Completely, utterly broken. Not a single sound, not a single picture. This is what I get for hiring a discount outfit." His insults, once irritating, now merely rolled off me. They were fuel for the fire. "I assure you, Mr. Thorne, Sonic Solutions is anything but a discount outfit. We pride ourselves on our quality," I replied, stepping inside. The house, usually so sterile, was now filled with the buzz of his party, though the lack of music was glaringly obvious. Guests milled about, looking slightly bewildered by the silence. It was clear his grand entertainment system was indeed failing to entertain. He led me to the main equipment rack, a sleek, custom-built cabinet hidden behind a sliding panel in his living room. It housed the nerve center of his entire system: multiple amplifiers, receivers, network switches, and control processors. It was a beautiful, complex beast, and last night, it had been purring like a kitten. Now, according to him, it was a dead cat. "See," he gestured wildly at the silent rack. "Nothing. Not a peep. This is completely ruined. My party is ruined. I demand you fix this immediately." I nodded gravely, affecting an air of deep concern. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Thorne. Let me take a look." I opened my toolkit, pulling out a multimeter and a small diagnostic laptop. I then proceeded to perform a theatrical diagnosis. I plugged in my laptop, pretending to run complex network diagnostics. I held the multimeter to various power outlets, feigning deep concentration. I checked circuit breakers, ran my hand along cables, and even tapped a few components with a thoughtful frown. I spent a good 15 minutes on this charade, occasionally muttering things like, interesting, seems to be a signal integrity issue, or perhaps a power fluctuation." All complete nonsense, of course, but it sounded technical enough to impress a layman. Mr. Entitled watched me like a hawk, his impatience barely contained. "What is it? What's the problem? Can you fix it or not?" "I believe I've identified the core issue, Mr. Thorne," I said, finally looking up with a feigned expression of triumph. "It appears to be a minor configuration error, likely caused by a power surge or perhaps a slight network hiccup. Nothing too serious, but it would certainly cause the entire system to go offline." I was careful to avoid any language that might suggest a physical fault or a component failure, as that would imply a deeper, more expensive problem. My goal was to make him believe it was a simple, easily rectifiable glitch. "So you can fix it?" he pressed, a glimmer of hope mixed with his usual suspicion in his eyes. "Absolutely," I replied confidently. "It will just take a moment to re-establish the network protocols and reinitialize the audio pathways." I then proceeded to do the bare minimum to get something working. I went to a single, easily accessible speaker in the living room, fiddled with its connection, and then, with a flourish, pressed a button on the control panel. A faint, almost imperceptible hum emanated from the speaker. It was enough. "There," I announced, pointing to the speaker. "You see? The system is responding. The network is re-establishing itself now. It will take a few minutes for all zones to come back online and for the system to fully recalibrate, but the core functionality is restored." I made it sound like a complex, time-consuming process, even though I had done virtually nothing. He leaned in, listening intently. The hum was indeed there. His shoulders visibly relaxed, and a sigh of relief escaped him. "Ah, yes. I hear it. Excellent, excellent. So it's fixed? Truly fixed?" "Yes, Mr. Thorne," I confirmed, my voice unwavering. "The system is fully operational. It will be back to 100% within the next hour as it completes its reinitialization sequence. You should have no further issues. This was the critical moment. Good, good, he muttered, already looking around at his guests, eager to get back to his party. Well, that's a relief. You've done well, young man. I suppose I can't complain about that. Just one final thing, Mr. Thorne, I said, pulling out my tablet. For our records, could you please sign here, confirming that the system is now fully functional and that you are satisfied with the repair? I held out the tablet, displaying a simple digital signature pad. It was a standard procedure for service calls, but in this instance, it was a crucial piece of the puzzle. He barely glanced at it, his mind clearly on his party. He scrawled his signature across the screen, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. Now, if you'll excuse me, my guests are waiting. Of course, Mr. Thorne, I said, retrieving the tablet and tucking it back into my bag. Enjoy your party. My smile was genuine now, but it was a smile of cold, calculated victory. He had just signed his own undoing. As he turned his back, already striding towards his guests, I moved swiftly, my hands a blur of motion. I reached into the equipment rack, my fingers flying with practiced ease. My eyes scanned the neatly bundled wires, identifying the critical connections. In a matter of seconds, while his back was still turned, I quietly, methodically, disconnected every single speaker wire from the amplifiers. Then, I moved to the main control processor and pulled the network cable that connected it to the house's internet, effectively cutting off its brain. Finally, I unplugged the main power cables from the amplifiers themselves, plunging them into complete, utter silence. I made sure to leave the power lights on the front of the components still glowing, giving the illusion that they were still active, still functional. He thought I was performing some advanced diagnostics, perhaps tidying up or making a final check. He had no idea I was systematically dismantling the very system he had just signed off on. I then calmly closed the equipment cabinet, ensuring everything looked untouched. All done, Mr. Thorne, I called out, feigning a final check of my tools. He gave a dismissive wave without turning around. I walked out of the house, the muffled sounds of his party fading behind me, a profound sense of satisfaction swelling in my chest. The trap was set. The bait had been taken. And now, all that was left was to wait. As soon as I was in my van, I pulled out my work phone and, with a triumphant click, turned it off. The silence of my apartment on Saturday afternoon was a welcome balm after the frantic pace of the past week. My work phone lay inert on my desk, its screen black, a silent testament to my obedience to Mark's instructions. I resisted the urge to check it, to see if Mr. Entitled had already realized the extent of his predicament. No, Mark had said to let him stew, and I was more than happy to oblige. The image of his triumphant smirk as he signed the tablet, moments before I systematically rendered his entire system useless, replayed in my mind, a source of profound, almost wicked, satisfaction. I spent the rest of Saturday and all of Sunday in a blissful state of detachment. I went for a long, unhurried run, enjoying the crisp autumn air. I cooked a proper meal, something more substantial than the hurried, on-site sandwiches of the past few days. I even indulged in a movie, enjoying the simple pleasure of an entertainment system that actually worked, knowing that somewhere, Mr. Entitled's grand party was likely a monument to technological failure and a symphony of awkward silences. I imagined his guests milling about, expecting a vibrant, immersive experience, only to be met with dead speakers and blank screens. I pictured his face, contorted in confusion, then dawning horror, as he realized his fixed system was anything but. The thought brought a genuine, unbidden smile to my face. The beauty of the plan, as Mark had laid it out, was its simplicity and its psychological precision. Mr. Entitled, in his arrogance, had essentially given us written proof that the system was operational before I performed the sabotage. That signed document was our shield, our undeniable evidence against any future claims of negligence or incompetence on our part. He had declared it fixed, and then, in his haste to return to his party, had failed to notice the subtle, yet utterly devastating, changes I had made. He had been so focused on his perceived victory, getting a free repair and avoiding the final payment, that he had walked right into our trap. I knew the initial fix I performed, the barely audible hum from a single speaker, would have bought me just enough time. He would have assumed the system was simply recalibrating, as I had told him, slowly coming back to life. But as the minutes turned into an hour, and the hour into several, the stark reality would have set in. No music, no movies, no ambient sound in any of the meticulously planned zones. Just silence. And with a house full of guests, that silence would have been deafening, a constant, humiliating reminder of his failed attempt to cheat us. I imagined him, at some point during the party, attempting to demonstrate his new, high-tech system to his impressed guests, only to be met with nothing but dead air. The embarrassment, the frustration, the dawning realization that he had been outmaneuvered, it was a delicious scenario to contemplate. He had boasted about getting things for free by complaining. Now, he would learn the true cost of that arrogance. By Sunday evening, I felt completely refreshed, my patience replenished, my resolve hardened. The physical exhaustion had faded, replaced by a quiet anticipation. I knew Monday morning would bring the inevitable. Mr. Entitled, having endured a weekend of technological purgatory and social humiliation, would be desperate. And desperation, as Mark often said, was a powerful motivator. I went to bed Sunday night with a sense of calm satisfaction, knowing that justice, in its own unique and technologically precise way, was about to be served. My sleep was deep and untroubled, free from the usual anxieties that often accompanied the end of a challenging installation. I had done my part, executed the plan flawlessly, and now it was Mark's turn to play his hand. I trusted him implicitly. He was the master negotiator, the one who knew how to turn a client's desperation into a profitable resolution. The next morning, Monday, I arrived at the office a little earlier than usual. The air was buzzing with a different kind of energy. Mark was already at his desk, a faint smile playing on his lips, his eyes twinkling with amusement. He looked up as I walked in, a knowing look passing between us. He didn't need to say anything. His expression confirmed it all. "So," I began, unable to contain my curiosity any longer, "I assume Mr. Entitled had a rather quiet party?" Mark let out a hearty laugh, a sound of pure, unadulterated triumph. "Quiet doesn't even begin to cover it, Alex." The man was practically apoplectic. The phone started ringing off the hook at 7 a.m. I let it go to voicemail a few times, just to let him stew a little longer. He leaned back in his chair, savoring the moment. "You, my friend, are a genius." The execution was flawless. He was absolutely convinced it was fixed when you left. He even signed off on it. "So, what did he say when you finally picked up?" I asked, leaning against his doorframe, eager for the details. Mark's smile widened. Oh, he was furious, as expected. Screaming about ruined parties, incompetent installers, betrayal, the works. Said his entire system was still dead, that we had defrauded him, that he was going to sue us, ruin our reputation, the usual litany of threats. He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. But then I calmly reminded him of the signed document. The one where he confirmed the system was fully functional when you left on Saturday. My grin mirrored his. This was the moment. This was where the trap sprung shut. He sputtered, of course, Mark continued, a mischievous glint in his eye. Tried to backtrack, claimed he hadn't read it properly, that he was rushed, that it was a trick. But I held firm. I told him, very politely, that his signature was legally binding proof that we had delivered on our end. I said, "Mr. Thorne, you yourself confirmed the system was working perfectly. Our records, signed by you, clearly state that. Therefore, any issues that arose after our technician left your property are not our responsibility under the terms of our initial agreement." I could almost hear Mr. Entitled's indignant spluttering on the other end of the line. It was beautiful. Then, Mark went on, lowering his voice conspiratorially, I told him that while we were under no obligation to return, given his signed confirmation, we are, after all, a company that values client satisfaction. So, as a gesture of goodwill, we would be willing to send a technician back to diagnose and repair this new, mysterious malfunction. But, of course, I interjected, already knowing the punchline, Not for free. Mark nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. Precisely. I informed him that since the system was confirmed working when we left, this new issue would be considered a separate service call. And given the urgency he was now expressing, and the fact that it was an emergency weekend call, it would incur a substantial diagnosis and repair fee. On top of the remaining balance, of course. How substantial? I asked, my eyes wide with anticipation. I quoted him an additional 50% of the original quote, on top of the remaining 50%, Mark replied, his smile broadening. So, effectively, he'd be paying double the original, already inflated, price. I explained that this fee covered the immediate dispatch of a senior technician, the specialized diagnostic equipment, and the expedited nature of the repair. I made it sound like we were doing him a massive favor, almost a charity case, by even considering it. The audacity of it was breathtaking and utterly brilliant. He was trapped. He had a house full of silent, expensive equipment, a ruined party, and a signed document proving he had accepted the system as functional. His only way out was to pay. What was his reaction? I pressed, barely able to contain my excitement. Oh, he went ballistic as expected, Mark chuckled. More threats, more accusations of fraud, more bluster about lawyers and ruining our business. He called me every name under the sun. Said it was outrageous, extortionate, that he would never pay such a ridiculous sum. He swore he'd rather tear the system out of the walls himself than give us another penny. And then, Mark said, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper, I simply remained silent. I let him rant. I let him exhaust himself. And when he finally ran out of steam, when there was nothing but heavy breathing on the other end of the line, I calmly reiterated our terms. Mr. Thorne, I said, the offer stands. We are prepared to dispatch a technician immediately upon receipt of the full outstanding balance, plus the diagnosis and repair fee. Otherwise, we wish you the best of luck with your silent entertainment system. The tension in the room was palpable, even just recounting the conversation. And he agreed? I asked, almost disbelieving. Mark leaned back, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. He fought it, Alex. He really did. But you could hear the desperation in his voice. He had a house full of expensive, useless equipment, a ruined party, and the prospect of a very long, very quiet week ahead. He needed that system working. He needed it now. And he knew, deep down, that he had no other option. After a long, agonizing silence, punctuated by a few more muttered curses, he finally, reluctantly, agreed. He said, then, send your man. But if it's not fixed this time, I swear to God. I told him not to worry, that it would be fixed. And then I sent him the updated invoice. The payment cleared 10 minutes ago. A slow, triumphant grin spread across my face. He paid double. He paid double, Mark confirmed, a matching grin on his face. And he's expecting you back there this morning. He sounded surprisingly polite, actually. Almost meek. I think the weekend without his precious system, and the realization that he was completely outmaneuvered, has humbled him. For now, anyway. Meek? I scoffed. That'll be a first. But I'm ready. I'll head over there now. I felt a surge of exhilaration. This wasn't just about the money, though the double payment was certainly a sweet bonus. This was about vindication, about showing a man who thought he was above everyone else that actions have consequences. Remember, Alex, Mark said, his tone turning serious for a moment. Just reconnect the wires. Make it look like a complex, intricate repair, but don't do anything more than what's necessary. He doesn't need to know how simple the fix really is. And make sure he sees you working on it. Let him believe it was a genuine, difficult repair. Understood, boss, I replied, already heading for the door. My toolkit felt lighter, my steps more confident. The thought of walking back into that house, knowing the full extent of the power I now held, was intoxicating. Mr. Entitled was about to get his system back, but he was also about to get a very expensive lesson in humility. And I, the young man he had so casually insulted, was about to deliver it. This was going to be the most satisfying service call of my career. The drive back to Mr. Entitled's house on Monday morning felt entirely different. The oppressive dread that had clung to me during the initial installation and the grim determination of Saturday morning had vanished, replaced by a buoyant sense of anticipation. The sun seemed brighter, the air crisper, and even the usually irritating city traffic felt manageable. I was no longer a weary technician facing an impossible task. I was an agent of poetic justice, returning to deliver the final, satisfying blow. As I pulled into his driveway, I noticed the absence of party decorations, the house once again returning to its sterile, imposing facade. The silence, however, was now a deliberate, powerful statement. I grabbed my toolkit, a lighter one this time, containing only the essentials for a very simple repair. He answered the door promptly, almost immediately after my first knock. This was a stark contrast to his usual dismissive attitude. His face, usually contorted in a sneer or a scowl, was now surprisingly subdued. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a weary resignation and perhaps a hint of genuine desperation. He was still in his expensive clothes, but they looked a little rumpled, as if he hadn't slept well. His eyes, though still wary, held a flicker of something akin to pleading. "Ah, you're here," he said, his voice devoid of its usual condescension. It was almost polite, a strained civility that felt utterly alien coming from him. "Thank you for coming so quickly. My system has been completely unresponsive since Saturday. It was quite inconvenient." He didn't mention the ruined party, the humiliated guests, or his earlier boasts. He simply stated the problem, almost meekly. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne," I replied, maintaining my professional demeanor, though an internal smirk played on my lips. "I understand there's still an issue. I'm here to resolve it for you." I walked past him, heading directly for the equipment rack, not waiting for him to lead me. The shift in dynamic was palpable. He was no longer the master of the house, dictating terms. He was a supplicant, eager for a solution. He followed me, hovering at a respectful distance, a stark contrast to his usual invasive hovering. He watched silently as I opened the equipment cabinet, revealing the neatly disconnected wires. The sight of them, still unplugged from the amplifiers and the network hub, filled me with a quiet triumph. This was the moment. I pulled out my small flashlight and a pair of wire strippers, even though no stripping was necessary. I wanted to make it look like a genuine, intricate repair. I knelt before the rack, my back partially to him, giving the illusion of deep concentration. I spent a good 5 minutes just staring at the wires, occasionally muttering to myself, yes. Just as I suspected, a complex network synchronization issue. All complete fabrication, of course. Then, with deliberate, slow movements, I began the repair. I picked up the first speaker wire, tracing it with my finger as if checking its integrity, before slowly, meticulously, reinserting it into its correct terminal on the amplifier. A small, almost imperceptible sound, but to me, it was the sound of sweet, sweet victory. I moved to the next wire, repeating the process. Each connection was a tiny act of retribution, a silent message to Mr. Entitled. Asterisk, you thought you could cheat us? Think again, asterisk. He remained silent, watching my every move, his gaze fixed on my hands. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer any unsolicited advice, didn't insult my work. He simply watched, a silent, desperate observer. The power dynamic had completely shifted. He was at my mercy and he knew it. I reconnected all the speaker wires, one by one, ensuring each was firmly seated. Then I moved to the network cable, the one that had cut off the system's brain. I paused for a moment, letting the suspense build before slowly, deliberately, plugging it back into the main control processor. Finally, I reconnected the power cables to the amplifiers. As the last power cable clicked into place, a soft, familiar hum filled the room. The power lights on the components, which had been glowing deceptively before, now flickered with renewed purpose, indicating full system functionality. I reached for the main control panel, selected a random audio source, and pressed play. Suddenly, the house was alive with sound. Crisp, clear music filled the living room, then spread seamlessly into the adjoining dining area, the kitchen, and beyond. The screens in the home theater flickered to life, displaying a vibrant, high-definition image. The system, which had been dead for over 36 hours, sprang back to life as if by magic. I stood up, turning to face Mr. Entitled, a professional, understated smile on my face. There you go, Mr. Thorne. It appears to have been a complex network and power synchronization issue. Everything is fully operational now. All zones are active, and the system is performing optimally. He stared at the equipment rack, then at the active screens, then back at me, his mouth slightly agape. The relief on his face was almost comical. It was as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He walked over to a speaker, put his hand near it, and then looked at me, a flicker of something akin to awe in his eyes. It's working, he exclaimed, a note of genuine surprise in his voice. Everything. It's all working perfectly. He then pulled out his phone, already dialing, presumably to inform his party guests that the entertainment was back on. Indeed it is, Mr. Thorne, I confirmed, my voice calm. We always ensure our systems perform to the highest standards. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a genuine, though still somewhat grudging, respect in his eyes. Well, he said, clearing his throat, I must say I'm impressed. You certainly fixed it. Thank you. He actually said, thank you. It was a small word, but from him, it felt like a monumental concession. My pleasure, Mr. Thorne, I replied, already gathering my minimal tools. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? No, that's quite all right, he said, already distracted by his phone call. You've done more than enough. I walked towards the door, a huge, triumphant grin spreading across my face the moment I was out of his direct line of sight. He had paid up, effectively paying double the original quote, for a repair that amounted to simply plugging in a few wires I had deliberately unplugged. He had learned his lesson the hard way, through humiliation and a hefty financial penalty. As I stepped out into the crisp Monday morning air, the satisfaction was immense, a warmth spreading through my chest. It was the most satisfying revenge I've ever pulled off.